Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay awake as you're passing through the turbulent time as being described by the previous speaker. Uh, we have an interesting panel here, and we'll try and keep you awake in terms of the questions that we have. To the panel, there is no particular order. Much of it has been discussed in the sessions that we had in the morning and just pre-lunch. So I'll keep my questions open-ended with some opening comments. Please jump in even if I direct the question to Ravi or Mr. Jindal. But if you feel that there's a valuable input, please do jump in and answer. So I'll just begin with some interesting thoughts, some interesting points that I noticed while preparing my notes. And one of them was, which caught my attention, is the EV charging industry sits at the intersection of the energy, digital, and automotive sector, and development in all these areas need to be taken into account when setting up the market growth or market-driven regulations. I think a very powerful statement, and we just saw one of the presentations from a gentleman from Fourth Energy. Another one which caught my attention was, I think it was a study from McKinsey. The part of the value chain which is about the battery cell manufacturing, and it talks about part of the value chain that holds most of the value creation for the entire nation, the world, the globe as a whole, and macroeconomic opportunities. So that is battery cell manufacturing, whether it is consolidation, securing funding, a lot of it from the upstream to midstream and the downstream, the entire value, the battery and cell manufacturing. So with these opening thoughts and some of the commitments that has been made by, obviously the comparison and the vehicle segments are very different in US and Europe, but there was some commitment made by Biden administration in terms of $5 billion fund being made available for developing charging infra, and obviously Fit for 55, the tagline or the sentence used by the European nations for reducing the greenhouse emission by 55%. Taking into account the climate, energy, resources, taxation, the funding, including all. So with these opening comments, and what I'll do is have a set of questions, as I said. And so if you see globally, it's known that despite the COVID year, the sales almost doubled. Different set of segment, but still it grew, and it touched a new record in terms of 6.6 million vehicles being sold, and 10% were the e-cars. And India too had its fair share, while the segments were different, what we are discussing today. But among the three core vehicle segments, which are under the commercial segment, which would be ELCV, the medium and the heavy truck, and the buses. Buses, because of the support by the government on the procurement side, the GCC contracts through FAME 2, the penetration level reached around 4%, which we expect, basis our estimates, the study that we did, will reach somewhere around 20 to 22% by 2031. The ELCV segment, which is where we have seen a lot of new models being launched, and vis-a-vis as compared to the next, which is the medium and the heavy truck side. We feel that ELCV would reach the penetration levels of around 15 to 16% by 2031. Currently, our projections are between 22 to 26. This particular segment will grow, while the base is low, but at a CAGR of approximately 105%, and from 26 to 31, it will be somewhere around 55% CAGR. So that's the growth story that lies ahead in terms of ELCV segment. So 2 minutes of quick introduction in terms of the vehicle segment, the component story that you represent, in terms of your initial thoughts, and then we'll pick up from there. 2 to 3 minutes each. So we can start from Ravi and then move to Ranjit. Then.
So first of all, the mic needs a charging, so you can understand the anxiety in this segment. Right? So my name is Ravi Panga. Panga के बारे में तो बताने की जरूरत नहीं है. So I represent a very young company called Process E-Mobility. We co-founded this company 2 years back. So in the COVID times, we are very small upcoming players. We got 700 double-decker electric bus order for the city of Mumbai. And like we'll be operating these 700 double-decker buses in GCC model, where we'll bring the assets, we'll operate the assets, we'll maintain the assets, we'll use renewable energy, we fund assets. So we cover whole ecosystem. And just imagine, we are operating this vehicle for 12 years, 170 kilometers every day, 700 vehicles, 365 days for 12 years. So this simple contract, so-called 700 vehicles, will be covering 500 million kilometers in the next 12 years. So that's the impact Process is going to do a small way. And we have a potential to take this envelope to 20 billion kilometers. Because today, India is measuring everything into kilometers. So I would like to introduce Process E-Mobility as a potential player in the segment to run 20 billion kilometers in the space of mass mobility. And in my second leg of my introduction, I'll definitely talk much about the help I required from my infrastructure people. And I can assure you from Process E-Mobility that we will move on quickly into last mile deliveries as well as macro e-mobility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ravi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ranjit Radhakrishnan. I was there for about 28 years in the CV industry, working on ICE, shifted loyalty 6 months back, moved into EV. I think it is just the opportunity in this space. It is just what more to be done is much, much huge. And that's the opportunity I saw. I work for a company called Exponent Energy. We are into the process of simplifying energy. I think we as a company, we believe that 0 to 1 shift in terms of the basics are done. It is the energy which has to get transformed. That is the shackle we have. So we started with battery packs and charging stations. We do a 15 minutes charging because what we believe as a company is you cannot force a transition to the logistics companies. I think logistics companies used to have got adapted to the ICE way of working. So if they used to go to the pump, do it in 1 minute. You cannot say now let's stop for 4 hours because you are on EV. So what we feel as a company is you have to come as close to an ICE pattern in terms of some of the best practices. Whether availability of charging stations, how fast do you charge, how long does the battery, I mean you cannot have a battery which is 2 years warranty. You need to give him an outlook for a longer time frame because that's when his cost of funding also comes down. Your finance companies are able to extend longer. So simplifying energy is what we do. We are a 1.5 years old startup and we've started with the last mile space on 3-wheelers, which is the most obvious space for us to start with. We work on LFPs, but we are quite cell agnostic and format agnostic, basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajit. Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Dr. Dev Mukherjee. I'm from company Omega Seki Private Limited. We are manufacturing electric vehicles. We are part of Anglian Omega Group, which has been in the business of steel processing and automotive components for 50 years. And now we are in the electric mobility space, electric vehicle manufacturing and vehicle mobility space. I see this EV business, and obviously we'll talk more about it during the session, but we see this as a technology play, first of all, where various technology integration has to happen. And secondly, we see this as a energy business, wherein the whole energy solution is going to be delivered to customers. The presentation which we saw before this was probably a manifestation of that. That it is no more going to be a pure automobile or automotive business. It is going to be an energy delivery business, wherein automobile will be a part of it. So that's where we see ourselves as part of the whole ecosystem. We build three-wheelers. Now we are going to start pickup truck, electric pickup truck in 1 ton and 3.5 ton payload range. This is going to be first. And also, very important part of our business is the global business strategy, where we have alliances in countries like Bangladesh, Middle East and Africa. We started with small exports from India, and in the second phase we are going to build our facilities over there along with various partners. I'm very happy to be here and sharing the dais with such eminent panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and I think it's a good opportunity to talk to such a large gathering. Just to give an introduction, I think we started on the EV journey. If we talk about EV today, I think there are no questions asked whether we need EVs or not, so it's very clear that we need EVs for various reasons, whether it is energy security, whether we need to clean up our cities from the pollution, or even optimizing and improving the efficiency of the whole, whether it is public transport or even the personal transport. So we need EVs in any way. So our journey, particularly going back to my Tata Motor days, we started actually quite early from 2005, and the first vehicle we did electrify was the ACE, which of course now it's in new form. I think it has been launched very recently. But we made ACE in almost 2007 or so. And then different transition to different platforms of the vehicles, coming to buses, first hybrids and then fully electric. So it has been a great journey, and I think the manifestation or the end result of that is that today Tata Motor is one of the leading players in the passenger cars as well as in the commercial vehicle for electrification. And since last 2-3 years, I think from a Tata Autocom, where now I am as an advisor on e-mobility as well as new technology. So again, there is a leap of faith taken by Tata Autocom to enter into this field and quickly come up with solutions for supplying the all EV drive lines, then the battery packs, and then of course now a lot of things related to power electronics across the segment of vehicles, right from two-wheelers to heavy commercial vehicles. So as we see, it's all a very exciting time. Just to pick what Mukesh mentioned, when we were going from Tata Motors CM, we used to talk to the government guy based on what Niti Aayog came out, that 70% has to be, in fact Niti Aayog mandate was 30% of the commercial vehicles need to be electrified. That's where we were telling them that every year country need to produce more than 12,000 vehicles, buses, if we have to complete the whole the public transport fleet into electric. So it has taken quite a bit of time, I would say, but good thing is that now we can see this with the last ESL tender of 5,500 buses, and then now we are talking about 50,000. So we are all catching up on this, and I think in this whole process, a lot of new developments have happened and a lot of new players have come in. So it's, I would say, for the EV industry, it's a very exciting time, and we will be all partner to this.
Yeah, good afternoon all. My commercial vehicle forum colleagues. So my name is Ajay Sharma and I am working with Mahindra and Mahindra with a bigger ecosystem for the EV development. Particularly, I am responsible for heavy commercial vehicle. So here, as the panel discussion started or introduction started, Ravi started with I am the opening batsman. So in this panel also, he is the opening batsman. For the buses, is the first in the commercial vehicles, which is going at a fast pace. And we will be heavy commercial vehicle maybe at later stage. It is evolving over a period of time. The technology is evolving. There are advantages and disadvantages of being opening player and the last player, or say middle player. So there will be a lot of learnings. That is one. Apart from that, it will be the right technology for the different segments or the optimization for the particular segment. That will be very critical because each and every segment within the commercial vehicle has its own ingredients or the business strategies. Even as I am responsible for heavy commercial vehicle, within heavy commercial vehicle there are different applications. Say tippers are a different application for the construction, like they have to run number of hours, we cannot stop them. As on date they are running around 20-21 hours a day. So where is the charging time or how to charge them particularly? Similarly, long haul, the range, even that I am explaining, it is not only the commercial vehicle completely. Within the heavy commercial vehicles, the challenges are different. Like long haul, currently we are covering say 400-500 kilometers per day. But as different ecosystem is developing, the type of roads are being constructed, that will go up to say 700-800 kilometers a day. In that, the charging infrastructure, that not only in the urban but also in the rural areas where the electricity is already in shortage. So there is a big opportunity. There is no doubt on, as Mr. Jindal said, there is no doubt on the need of electrification. Only thing is the challenges in different segments and how to overcome that with the technology development as well as regulations and the ecosystem development. So we will further discuss on these things.
So thank you for those opening comments. And one thing which actually stands out is the ecosystem that will have to prevail, because it's just not about the automotive sector, but it's about technology, it's about energy transformation. So all the mainstream players and the upcoming new age companies have to work together in developing this as a sector, because it's fast evolving, including the financials, right? So as Sharma ji said, we'll be the last one, so we'll be happy making more money in terms of the acquisitions that we will do. So on that note, so coming back to Mr. Jindal, since you've been the stalwart in terms of leading it from the front, in terms of Tata Autocom, the needs of the EV segment, and we know that twin cogs which will enable EV charging infra and the battery, so the needs vary differently from the segments that we are seeing which are currently running for ELCV and LCV, and medium and heavy truck and the buses, right? And the fixed routes may not be that a challenge, but it will definitely vary from the other segments. So how do you see the EV battery technology, especially for the CV, which is LCV and MCV, both segment evolving with energy storage technologies? Would you have some comment on that?
Yeah. So I think as we all know that today if I say from a chemistry point of view, there are majorly three chemistries which are prevalent. One is of course NMC, and then LFP, and then LTO. In fact, in the beginning we tried to evaluate all. Of course, we all know the maybe 2 years back, the whole trend was that everybody will go for NMC. In fact, people had written, means almost written off LFP technology globally, even because of the certain limitations in terms of energy density and the mainly from an energy density point of view. And NMC was touted as the ultimate horizon. But with the I think the kind of cost reduction which has been achieved in the LFP technology, I think the whole world is moving towards, yes, Europe is still hanging on to maybe NMC to some extent, but there is again a transition from, even in Europe also, whenever we talk to today to people from Europe who are bringing technology to India, they are quite open to go with the LFP. So the summary is that from a battery chemistry technology point of view, today the most ruling technology is LFP, which is equally good for both passenger cars. It has been already demonstrated. All the Nexons which you see are there with LFP technology. And even LFP technology is developing where the energy densities which are being talked about are almost getting nearer to the NMC technology. So what we believe is that particularly in a country like India where the temperatures are quite high and the thermal management is one of the big challenges. So the LFP technology will remain the ruling technology for next at least 3-4 years, because the rate of technology development in the batteries is very rapid and high. So you never know when we will have maybe polymer batteries or maybe solid state batteries or sodium batteries. So those are the things which are being talked about. But if you go by the past record, no battery has come to a production stage in less than 10 years or maybe even 15 years. So on that basis only we can say that as of now the chemistry which will be ruling will be LFP. LTO is good for some niche applications, but again it has got a very poor energy density, the weights are very high. The only advantage is that you can get more number of cycles, so you have a potential to use the smaller batteries, but it has got its own challenges. We can discuss it as a maybe in the follow-up this thing, what are the challenges with LTO. But from a battery technology, I think what has happened in India is that now the pack manufacturing, now if you leave aside the cells, whereas today there is nobody is making cells in India, but apart from that, the whole pack, module pack, or even now module-less designs are there. The everything has been developed and now productionized in India. Almost everything, whatever we are producing today in our factories in TECO, except for cells and BMS is something which is a little bit of experience one has to do with its own development, which we are also doing. But rest of everything is local. In fact, we are working towards even exporting some of the components to Europe from whatever batteries we have developed. That is related to batteries. Anything else?
So Ranjit, what's your take on this?
I think I'll take the other side. I think he's come from technology, he's a technology man. I'll come from the other side. Okay. I think he's absolutely right in terms of how LFPs emerged as the use case for across the globe, sort of, and we have also adopted the same. I think one distinction that I wanted to make in terms of when we understand the CV industry in the country, I think we immediately either compare to China or the Europe or the US in terms of, but I think these are completely different patterns. I think where we've started from is not where Europe started or anywhere else in the world started. I think to me the most meritorious case for an adoption from ICE to EV is possibly either India or China. I think in Europe or US, I think it was more for green and other reasons, images and other things, where the adoption started. So which means we are one of the most competitive industry from, countries in the world or centers in the world from a technology perspective. So, to me, and it is just the beginning of the world. I think I wouldn't know so much about buses and other things. I think when I look at three-wheelers, when I look at two-wheelers and things like that, I think everything that we have adopted, and Mr. Jindal was right, I think we still import the cells. Even with that, we are one of the most competitive from a TCO perspective. I think globally, I think whether it is acquisition cost or running cost or the total ownership cost, we are the one of the best in the world in terms of the TCO perspective. So from a typical technology adoption perspective, we have started off in an amazing fashion is our interpretation in terms, especially from a CV industry perspective. I think.
So Ravi, I think courses as a parent would also have battery as one of the areas. So what's your take on this in terms of the technology that will prevail in India over a longer period of time? While lithium will get the other technologies are still 6-7 years away in terms of the commercialization. So what's your take on that? At least catering to the higher segments, which is your heavy trucks and buses, maybe to some extent ELCV.
This is a very interesting part of the engagement. So I'll divide this discussion into three sectors. First is we as the GCC players. So we have taken the order. Now we have no choice than to execute the order, run the buses. So if you look to me as an operator or a GCC contract, I don't want to use those harsh words, I least care which technology, but the battery should run my bus so that I can execute my contract. So that's more on the business side. On the business side. Right? But when it comes to technology, I'm supporting both of them. Let me take first Jindal Saab's observation. We are into LFP currently. More so because of availability, more so because of trade-offs in costing. So today LFP is available at a given operational level, less than $200 per kilowatt hour, right? If somebody gives me NMC or solid state battery or sodium, whatever, I'm willing to take it. So here comes the point, TCO. So for operators like us, it's the TCO and a technology, safety, reliability, vibration. But the third point is very important for us. I've been 30 years in the industry of commercial vehicles, 28 years in the ICE and 2 years in the mobility. Our life in this sector is all about trade-offs. We have to trade off one against the other. So we can't pitch this technology is better or that technology is better. End of the day, we are all sitting here to do business. Technology is one part of the story. The beauty of EV ecosystem is all we have to share. That's why even though I'm OEM sometimes, but I sometimes say myself as a tech player. Because tech to OEM, that transition is happening very fast. The last point, so I have a team of 200 people right now. We operate in 6 countries with different regulations, different technical requirements. My design center is in Berlin, Germany, so what Dave says, I recognize that. So what we have learned is one super thing. I left college 30 years back, but I revisited all the colleges in last 2 years because there is a very slight gap between the academic people who are developing on the EV ecosystem and us. So while I'm talking for Cossy's battery side LFP, but my whole technology team is working on sodium, metal on air, solid state with one of the best universities in the world. So I think EV vehicles, EV ecosystem has brought a very narrow gap between the academic share and the industry, and commercializing of the ideas of the academic share, EV is a wonderful ecosystem. So I am pressurizing my tech team, while we'll go to the contract with this GCC, 500 million kilometers with LFP, if a TCO you can provide me a better with safety norms and a right operational convenience, then I think we can go for any battery technology. So my take is very neutral because we have to run our business at a low TCO, but with the underlying fact that it should be safer, not at the cost of safety. That's my take on the battery technology and the vehicle. Thank
So
you.
Dev, any thoughts in terms of, one part is the question that we asked. The other is on the static energy. So just leave it to you in terms of, let's say if there is a demand which gets developed in the static energy space, will this significantly bring down the prices in terms of the battery usage? How will that particularly affect the mobility segment?
Yeah, I think there are two aspects of this. We have to see the entire battery economy as it develops in the country. The battery economy will consist of the materials that that go into manufacturing of the battery system, whether it is LFP, NMC, tomorrow metal layer, graphene, and so many other materials will happen. The amount of R&D that is happening globally is phenomenal. So that's the material part, the material inputs and availability and sourcing and the entire supply chain that kicks into it. The second part is the application part of the technology. How are these cells going to be built? We are talking about now Tesla is doing direct cell to the body. So instead of modules, it is that's where they have come up with the innovative design. That's the second part of it, and the third part is obviously the charging. There would be different technology. My friend Ranjit has got a 15-minute fast charging. Then there is rapid charging, top-up charging, swapping, etc. Probably in the context of India, all of them will coexist. Now, coming to the other part of it that you are saying, the application of the static, the energy banks, if you call that, and it has been successfully done in California and Australia by Tesla particularly. So I think there is definitely a business case. The point you have raised is whether once the scale comes, will the costs will come. By end of the day, the whole battery economics has to work. What is it costing me today in terms of per unit cost by coal or alternate energy or hydro or whatever, vis-a-vis what is going to be the price. So that's obviously one of the major factor which will enable the whole mass circulation of these technologies. And definitely volumes play a part. Once the volume goes up, the prices will come down. We have seen it in practically many other sectors. And we will have to also see the entry of major big players. Now the PLI scheme, etc., have been unloaded, and Reliance is coming up, but they are publicly. The chairman has announced some very, very significant, rollout plans. So obviously that part is there. The cost will come down. And using energy storage for either alternate, energy supplies, or maybe even a part of the normal grid supply. We'll have to watch and see how it pans out. I don't have the clear answers, but I think this will be some part of the whole energy play that is going to pan out in India. That's my view.
So I think when you say static, you are talking about storage, this thing. See, the good or maybe the challenging part of this is there is a huge demand which is coming up as far as the energy storage is concerned. In fact, India is a very, I would say, critical player in this area where we need a lot of energy storage. Good thing is that India is generating solar energy at a very rapid rate. So a lot of solar energy is not getting utilized the way it should get utilized because of lack of storage system. Because all the initial plants which were set up, they were all without storage. But the new setups which are coming up, they are integrated with the solar storage, this battery storage, which is going to actually push up the demand of batteries, lithium-ion batteries, to a very large extent. So, in fact, as a result of that, there is a fear from an automotive side, is that in fact it will create shortage. of the availability of batteries. It is in any case is already there, and that's why maybe those who are tracking the price movement of lithium-ion batteries, in fact, they have started showing an increasing trend rather than further coming down. So particularly LFP sales prices have almost now increased in last 1 year by almost 10 to 20%. So from a one perspective, emergence of energy storage systems coming in the in conjunction with the solar say forms is a good thing, because then you will be able to do a lot of things by in the area of grid stabilization or even improving the energy efficiency. But it will, at least for a short term period, it will have a challenge. But there will be capacities which will be created, which will probably add to the demand means availability, so that will probably help the overall things.
In terms of the charging infra, right? So, if one were to make the roadmap of the commercial vehicle segment, right? So, I'm just talking about the ELCV going towards, the mid segment and the buses. So, how this charging infra roadmap would look like? New technologies. So, as of now, we understand it's largely driven by buses are driven by the destination charges, right? But there will be intermittent requirement for overnight plus mid route, could be a mid route, right? Swapping. So, how, if one were to make, depending upon how the adoption is taking place, how will the charging infra roadmap would look like for a country like India? You don't have money and $5 billion to invest, right? So, how will that map look like?
I think for different form factors, different solutions will happen. In the smaller form factors of the two-wheelers and three-wheelers, it will be a combination of fixed charging, home charging, then swapping would probably take a bigger share. It's easy to do, and you can charge the vehicle at home safely. And the bigger vehicles, for example, the LCVs, buses, trucks, etc., I think the fixed charging will have to be planned. Now the planning is most important. Where you find that it has to be evaluated statistically using the data that you collect from the market, depending on the large amount of road infrastructure that is being built. And also the whole urbanization which is going to happen, and it is going to be part of the whole urban planning as well, whether parking lots, for example, then public charging, and then coming to the home charging. So the different rules, regulations, statutory aspect also have to be taken into account. All this will, I believe, evolve over next few years, because this is a nascent industry, it is still developing. If you ask me the roadmap, today I think the government data says we have about 1600 or 1700 public charging, and we are forecasting around 70,000 more in next 5 years, and there are already incentives, etc. So I think we will probably need much more than that, looking at the whole landscape of India and the whole variety. We have metro, non-metro, urban, semi-urban, rural, etc., then the whole landscape, usage pattern, the customers' driving pattern, etc., changes in each of these areas. So I think there is no fixed or a one-size-fit-all kind of strategy that is going to work, according to me. It is going to be a combination of public charging, then there is going to be the private charging players. Also, like Reliance is saying that they will have small battery swapping stations at every maybe kirana shop or shopping area, etc., which is going to bring scale. Scale is, I think, most important, which will remove a lot of these issues of anxiety and cost, and drive the cost down. So I think this is where the technologies like fast charging, rapid charging, etc. will definitely play a role, and the batteries will have to be built and the vehicles will have to be built according to that. And I think we'll have to see how it actually pans out. I don't think anybody has a clear-cut answer of how is it going to be. But definitely, we need the scale. We need a large number of, probably 100,000 or more, of these charging stations. Looking at the way government is planning, and it's a humongous number that we are talking about. 50,000 buses will probably need more than 10 gigawatt hour of battery itself. So, and then the replenishment after 3 years, 5 years. So I think the whole battery economy, as I said earlier, and the energy mix is going to be very, very critical, and it's going to evolve in a very in a manner that a lot of these technologies will play a role. So I think the number is going to be huge, and this whole mix is going to be play a role in the Indian context.
This is an important point, so I'm just trying to supplement it. So let me divide this quickly into 5 sectors. Just imagine a scenario that tomorrow all the petrol pumps and all the diesel pumps in the country are off. What do you do with your diesel vehicles? Now that's the situation we are in on the EV side. We don't have chargers. So it's not about the market or demand and all that. What is the prioritization for the government? So government has invested in HPCL, IOCL, or this for last 70 years, giving subsidies to them, building the ecosystem on the charging side.
Giving subsidies to the consumers through them.
Yeah, so I'm coming to that very crucial point. While on the EV side, they left to a small place like Cossisi Mobility, GCC, to create your own charging infrastructure. So we have to build our own charging infrastructure to operate the buses. So government needs to invest on the charging side like what they invested on the petroleum side. So this is one fundamental part. The second part, which is very important for us, is I come from Dubai right now. I've been staying in that country for 5 years. Dubai. I operate Tesla for last 2.5 years. I have not paid even a single rupee on my electricity consumption. So for me, electricity is free in any charging outlets in Dubai or UAE for that matter. For me, parking is free. Even under the priority parking A section, Tesla is free or electric. Petroleum producing country is advocating for the usage of electric cars with the free electricity. I have not paid a single rupee in last 3.5 years in Dubai. Parking. So there are certain added sites which has to do in order to do this one. The fourth part, which is very important. Standalone, a charging infrastructure is a business in itself. So let's take a very dynamic route, because we are sitting in Maharashtra. The 700-kilometer route from Mumbai to Nagpur, Samruddhi Road or whatever we call. There will be thousands of people who will take that route. But if you tell them to take a route from Sangli to Kolhapur or from Pune to down, nobody will take that infrastructure because they will feel that it doesn't work in the economy of scale. The fifth is important, and then I'll sum it up everything, is the interpolability, which means that a same structure can be used for bus charging as well as for cars, two-wheelers, three-wheelers. When we travel in Europe, we see the same structure where all the 3 sections of mobilities, micro-mobility to last-mile mobility to buses, can use the same pod or whatever we call it. So interpolated, there is no even standard rules. Some technology players bring GBD, some become CCS2, and even in that some comes with a gun with 4 points, 5 points. So you cannot even fix, so you cannot even if it is there, infrastructure you cannot use. So these are the challenges. So where is that unified EV charging government or private participation company that will beat the charging like IOCL or BPCL or Reliance part of it? The story lies there. I can assure you one thing, having traveled so many countries, and we already Cossys operates in 6 countries and we are going to go in 18 countries in the next 12 months. I can tell you there's a market in India, people are watching to it, we have the alternates in the world. I will sum it up last thing, after IT revolution in this country, if something were to revolutionize Indian economy, is going to be the EV ecosystem. I'm not saying OEM alone, but all the EV ecosystem. So I think government, a lot of policymakers are here. I think instead of floating the tenders of 50,000 buses or 5,000 buses, I think we should float more tenders on providing the ecosystem like chargers. Second is about the quality of power, about the grid lines available to those charging stations. Because to bring one grid line to your parking lot, we have to spend 5 crore rupees, which is not a part of a GCC. So we are actual people who are operating. Now coming to the last point in Mumbai city, even if all the car users want to do a overnight charging, where is the parking for them to do the overnight charging? They don't have a parking place in the night. They keep the vehicles on the road. So I think we'll have to solve this lot more easier issues to have a faster adoption of the car. I'm not a frustrated side of the story. I'm more trying to probe the system that these are the areas where we should work. Fourth partner, there will be 100 partners like them who will come and give us charging infrastructure, who will give us power, who will give us so that all the OEMs can promote. So it's a larger piece of the story rather than specific on that. What absolutely the roadmap can be laid down. That's not a challenge. But the challenge is we'll have to work all through so that we have a common objective. And here, the big players like Mahindra, Tata, or all has to learn an art of sharing and the technology part. Because if they start sharing, people like us who are new in the ecosystem, otherwise, Causy's e-mobility or Pinnacle e-mobility or you take any mobility in the world, EV has given us opportunity to be an OEM or a tech player. And here, the big players should start sharing interpolability or a common structure, then we all can deliver the beautiful roadmap for India. Thank you for crossing my briefing, but it's very important because this is the point what a policymaker should address rather than only the OEMs or the component people or the energy distribution people. Thank you very
I'm
much.
sure Mr. Jindal would be wanting to respond to it, but let's just hold it for a second. When you say, are you sure in terms of GCC, the 5 crore number that you quoted, is that the charging infra overhead you said 5 crores?
Yeah, so in the GCC contract, if we were operating here, so 11 kV line, if it's given, drawing a 11 kV line to my 440 volts to my charging infrastructure for overnight charging, the cable, four partner people can tell more better than me because they bring that type of infrastructure. So I love four partner for one reason. If they recollect, 18 months back they were the first people who went on their premises to learn about this costing. And they gave me open costing. They told me, Ravi, don't do this nonsense, we'll do for you. Because this is a business in itself. Delhi government has to spend 5.5 crores to bring the KV line to the operating station within the overnight charging. Expensive, 5 crores. We don't budget it in our TCOs. So every cost is calculated. The last part, because having you open on cost, the same buses currently, ICE, they're operating at 100 kilometers, 100 rupees per kilometer, their cost. Cost is surprised them by offering almost like 50% of the cost. And now our team is figuring it out how to get it. And we got it. So that means in half of the cost in the current mass transit system, you can deliver with profit. So these are few learnings what I'm saying, but the cost of the government has to be passed on to the government. They should not pass every cost to the GCC. Otherwise, in the mass transit system, what Jindal sir and all has said, there is 50,000 buses required. Tata Motors, Mahindras, Ashok Leyland, they can deliver this vehicle. People also can be a part of the story. But a lot of the cost sectors has to be duly apportioned and taken care. That's the point on the first.
So coming back to Sharma ji and Jindal sir, maybe a quick response.
Just to add, see, as the cost, whatever is being said is very right.
But somebody else beated you on the price.
And so there is a cost. Whenever you do anything, there is a cost. No doubt about it. But one thing also you should see. In fact, originally when we started, we were also very much not liking GCC. What is the meaning of GCC? Because the way the whole operations have been held, once you sell the vehicle, they are the babies of the operators. They handle how they handle, and then they will running at whatever cost, whether it is STUs or private operators. But when GCC came in, the whole chain got activated. That how do I now? GCC brought in another thing about the competitiveness.
Yeah.
Though I am in from OEM as well as from a component side, but the good thing is that it has brought in a lot of efficiency in the system. When the first tenders were made, the GCC cost was almost 80 rupees, and now it is 42 rupees. So from where that 38 rupees has come in, you tell me. So because that has triggered, it's not that somebody is doing it at a loss, or maybe he is just doing a marginal costing or whatever they are doing. But I am 100% sure that nobody will do it at a loss. He will definitely would have a visibility at least that okay, maybe in the first 6 months I will make a loss, but I will recover by doing A, B, C, D, E. So the short point is that when you have a competitive situation like this, it triggers a lot of efficiency improve in the whole ecosystem, and then it helps everybody.
So, just switching the topic, because I know we can spend hours on this, honestly, on the GCC contract, and hopefully there will be another leg in terms of when the government is contracting, so these suggestions will be utilized by them. But on the supply side, since you're talking about it on the LCV side, so any thoughts on supply side in terms of how you're working on the various pieces, whether it's motor, controller, the other significant items on the supply side?
Yeah, the supply chain anyway for an automotive industry is a highly complex and material intensive supply chain. Of course, the number of parts are less in EV, but still the complexities are quite similar. So if you talk in the context of India, you see the critical parts are obviously the battery, BMS, then you have the powertrain, the motor, controller, reduction gear, drive line, etc. And the whole electronics that is packed into the vehicle to get all the data processing, connectivity, etc. So if I analyze these elements, there are majorly the electric parts you can categorize as the motor, then you have the controller, and obviously battery is a energy asset which goes into it, and the third part is the electronics. Batteries, as we all know, we have very high hope. Batteries, the cells will start getting manufactured here. As of now, we have an issue. The cells are imported, and also the quality of cells are very doubtful. We can't even check what grade of cells are coming, and we have to take it on the face value. So next few years will tell. I have my own views on several of the vehicles which are there in the market. The next 2 to 3 years, we will see the performance, the charge retention, mileage, the capacity fade, etc. So that's the key. The whole cell manufacturing, battery manufacturing, module manufacturing, on the supply chain side, this is a big concern. We are relying on imports. So in a way, our energy security is shifting from Gulf to China at the moment. Now on the motors, I think this is where the Indian industry and particularly MSMEs will have to take a very high initiative. MSMEs, I think in this country have not been really appreciated so much. Particularly in the context of automotive industry, a large amount of automotive work happens in the MSME clusters and segments. I think this is where the real opportunity lies, not only for India, but to become a global player. And in fact, we can talk about it for hours, that there are huge opportunities which are coming up in the global market where we did not really excel in the IC era. You know, our global market share is just about 1%, even less than 1%. If you talk about the components exports, this is what I think we can do in this EV era. The MSMEs can take the lead, whether it is some part of the drivetrain or you know, the electronics, IT. You know, of course, we can do enormous work in developing the software, the algorithms, etc. Because that is a substantial amount of work that goes into automotive in terms of value. So I think these supply chains today, the links are missing, but I can see this developing very, very fast. And one more thing, you know, the critical element is the human resource, which we generally don't talk about much. The entire ecosystem will need a huge amount of human resource development, training, not only at engineers but technicians, mechanics, you know, the repair people who do the work in the field. We will have to train them, we'll have to teach them. So that is where they are part of the whole supply chain. And I think the way to make it success in a very short period of time, because what is happening in India is two things. You know, one is the speed of this change is huge, and secondly the scale is big. You can have either. You know, we are not used to having such kind of radical changes in India, but this is the first time we are seeing with the government being the biggest driver of this change. So I think this to manage this whole huge change in a short period of time, the stakeholders have to come together. It is industry, academia, researchers, you know, the whole knowledge providers, which generally doesn't happen in India. You know, academics work separately, they write their research papers, and that's it. Industry doesn't interact, and vice versa. I think this is where this knowledge has to get transferred to industry out of the labs and incubation and get commercialized. This is where the whole robust supply chain will have to be created on the technology side, on the manufacturing side, not only for domestic but for the whole global industry. That's my view.
I'll just add on. I think you reminded me on something which is extremely important, which is about stakeholders. I think if I look at energy is one of the biggest problems with respect to EV adoption. Energy, we always recognize, is a two-sided problem. What happens is there are three ecosystems today. One, we have the OEMs who manufacture a vehicle. You have the battery manufacturer who's separate. He does something on his own. Then you have the charge point operator. Okay, so he does something on his own. These three don't work together. Why is it so important? If you look at heavy vehicles, for example, I think today nobody looks at LFP for heavy-duty vehicles because its weight, range, all these factors together, somebody has to. I mean, if you make something for 500 kilometers range, then it's too heavy a battery, which means the payload is compromised. So it is important to innovate there. And Dave sir just reminded me of what we do, something called rapid charging, okay, which is 15 minutes. And we believe that it is possible to do a truck also in a 15 minutes. Okay. Now, did we do it so far? No, we are building towards it. But the point is, it is important for innovation in this place. And they just talked about the need for the stakeholders coming together, which is academia, OEMs. My friend Pangasab just reminded me that, it is not the OEMs working separately, startups trying to struggle on the other end. Unless all the stakeholders work together, and many countries have shown as example on how the government facilitated it. We don't need to look at the government. I think even ourselves, we should work together, the stakeholders should work together and create a roadmap for any of the categories that we're talking about. If you look at three-wheelers today, three-wheelers is getting stabilized, okay? And that's a good reminder on how we can move to 4, 6, 10 and move forward. We definitely need a network. We need to have a balanced network. We need to have the battery size right in place. We need to have the OEMs who have stabilized. All this is part of the system. So it is so important for the stakeholders to work together.
So just a quick question, which is I've already got the ultimatum that I've exceeded the time, but There is one thing which is talked about the industry, because R&D is generally considered a line item, not being shown prominently on the balance sheets of the companies, right? So maybe barring a few, I'm not commenting at Tata's at this point in time, but generally as an industry, okay, and we are talking about a technology industry which is heavy on, which is where the technology is very pervasive in nature, right? Which cuts across sensors, telematics, everything, right? So motor controller, it's all electronics and technology, right? And if you look at the government, and we must give credit while whatever that we've discussed on the days in terms of their schemes, so there are schemes which are supporting the R&D, right? There are schemes which are supporting the capital subsidy, you put your capex and you get capital subsidy, right? Some of it qualifies from Ministry of Electronics. There is a scheme which is attached to the link, so it's covering the complete life cycle, right, in terms of a product. I won't name the scheme, but there has been not many takers on the R&D side where the government has been open to providing, if the proposals are really good, to invest together with the companies. Now this is something which, no one can run away, honestly. So the question is, how are we doing on R&D? That's the last question, honestly, because we have spoken about it. It's technology, it's everything, it's energy, it's everything, clean technology. But where is the money that is being spent on R&D?
Yeah, if you want me to respond?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. You see, essentially, we are not an R&D country. The whole, what I'm talking about is a culture part of it. Of course, there are various reasons. Cost of capital, resources, investment, long time ROI, etc. I can go on, but the point here is that.
So the point that I mentioned was, there are certain schemes which are available for
Yes.
the government which provides, but there were no takers in those terms, right?
Yes.
So you can still go and have a collaboration with an Israeli company. There's nothing wrong in it, but where is your, your work? Talking about the larger companies as well,
Yes.
which is, it's not as a item which shows, which is like, appears on the balance sheet in terms of total cost.
Yeah, I agree. And historically, we have always relied on partners, and particularly in the context of automotive industry. I'm not an expert on any other industry, but auto industry, we had top two are Japanese and Koreans. They brought in a lot of technologies. My colleagues, Tata, Mahindra, they have done phenomenal work in-house, but and also with various collaborators. So I think there's nothing wrong in that. I have nothing against it. But what I'm saying is, lot of these innovative technologies or knowledge can be incubated within our institutions like IITs or other engineering colleges, and we see the result. We work with this gentleman, their company, and two of them are startups, with very innovative business models. So the point you raised, yes, government has got various schemes and it is unfolding. There is I hope and I think there is a roadmap, but the whole speed of adoption has to increase, because for me, you see, if I have to set up, if I am a startup or I am a legacy OEM as we call, for me, of course, money matters. Everybody is here to ensure a certain return, but also the time matters. The government, the incubation time, the whole lead time, and the way things move. We all know what I'm talking about. So I think that is critical. We have to make it that ease of access has to be ensured. And then we'll see, and as I said, more than the big companies, the MSMEs will have to be taken into this whole R&D, ecosystem. Probably that is the better way. That's my view.
So, yeah, I think what you are saying is right. There are a lot of government schemes where there's a lot of money around. On paper it looks that there's a lot of money. But unfortunately, what has happened is that flow of that money to the actual somebody who is working on R&D is a challenge. in the government ecosystem, the money flows very easily to the universities and the government R&D centers. Very easily it will flow, where there is no accountability of any tangible output or any product output. Whereas if any industry goes for any funding from any government agencies, you have to go through a whole lot of this thing. But the good news is that yes, there are companies, Tata Motors, as I know, as I have already told, Mahindra, maybe Ashok Leyland, and others are spending a lot of money on R&D. That's why you could see that when there was a call that yeah, you need buses, everybody was ready with the buses. So that is a clear sign that yes, people were working in the background, though maybe at a slower pace, without even knowing that there will be any demand. So that is one part. I think the another good thing which I would like to say is, as I said, within a very short span of 1 year, 2 years, the ecosystem exists. We could, in TACO, we could localize all the battery packs except for cells, because cell needs a very high level of investment. Same is true by next year, all the motors will be localized except for magnets again, which are this thing, or of course you leave aside the chips which are not being made in India. But so, and coming to the software side, I think it was mentioned. I know, let's say in again Tata ecosystem I am telling, but that same is true for many others. Whether it is TCS, whether Tata Elxsi or Tata maybe another companies, they have done lot of work on software side, whether it is BMS, whether it is controllers. For global OEMs, they have done a lot of work. So it will not take any time. If somebody is really interested to do something, you can just use that and implement that. So from that point of view, I think the future is the way the electrification is getting a good push from the government. The scenario is quite good. There will be a lot of good development.
Yeah. So I'll make it 30 seconds, very simplistic one. So there are 4 schemes: supply side, demand side, beautiful work by the government, no questions. PLI attempt started, and R&D also, a lot of things are happening on that. But only one thought process I want to leave for the startups like us on the supply side. So government is giving us subsidy of X amount, and they demand a bank guarantee of that amount. So for a startups like that, we have to invest the complete amount into giving a BG to the government. So where is the subsidy amount for us for the operational period? So that's the challenge. So people have to look more intrinsic about what's the benefit it derives in these 4 pockets. The moment the R&D people start realizing that there's actual money available for the energy and time they're investing in that, they will start investing, period. That's the short sweet.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry I have to, because we have already exceeded 20 minutes of
I think from an EV system perspective, it is an amazing phase for startups to thrive. Okay? There is just no doubt. Okay? A lot of innovation happening, technology flowing in tremendously well. So to me, it is an amazing phase, and I don't want to put any objection at this point of time.
From my side, I think I'll have only one point, and there are policy makers, etc., and various stakeholders are here. I think the financing is something that public sector banks have to come forward and open the doors. We have talked about it at several forums, and I think anyway 70% of the banks are owned by the state, so they have to come and support the industry. That is where it will be a game changer. And I see this EV is not just a mobility or an automobile or energy, whatever you call it. I think it can become a large scale vehicle for growth across a large section of the society, provided this whole financing and affordable capital is made available.
I think most of the things have been said. I would only say about the technology part which we started. You see, every vehicle, there are two-wheelers, right till heavy commercial vehicle, there is no one-fit solution. So there are a lot of new frontiers for the technology which need to be developed and mastered. We have not talked about fuel cells, we have not talked about methanol fuel cells, etc., etc. There are a lot of things to come in, And I think if the pace, the way it is going on, there are good times ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say no one can will alone. In this ecosystem has to be at that level. Government has to support all the segments and it has to be affordable. So when it will be a value proposition, customer value proposition or the TCO what we say, so mass adoption will start in each and every segment. For that particular segment, value proposition has to be there.
Thank you. I've taken the liberty of extending the time, but
Okay.
at 4 o'clock, so it's still 1 hour, right?